Welcome to This Explainer. Grab your detective hats, because today we're investigating a massive methodological blind spot hiding right in plain sight within modern medical research. We're going to take a really close look at the science of acupuncture. Now, to be clear up front, the source material we're exploring today doesn't aim to debunk the practice. Rather, it critically examines exactly how we study it. It suggests that highly advanced scientific papers might be entirely missing the most fundamental variable of all. Now, millions of us totally accept the idea that sticking a needle into the body can stimulate healing. But we've got to start our investigation with a really fundamental Socratic question. Has the acupuncture needle ever actually been scientifically defined? It sounds incredibly basic, right? I mean, we all know what a needle looks like. But from a strict, rigorous scientific standpoint, why are we using this specific needle? And what exactly is it doing at a measurable, physical level? Section 1. The foundational research flaw. Okay, so to really peel back the layers of this scientific onion, we first need to interrogate the actual stimulus itself. The source material asks 4 progressive questions to break down our assumptions. First, why use a needle in the first place? Sure, it has operational advantages. It's sharp, controllable, you can sustain manipulation with it. But does that explain why it heals? Second, can we use something else? Well, theoretically, yeah. Massage, cupping, and moxibustion are all just different forms of stimulus input. Third, how do mechanical, chemical, or electrical stimuli actually differ? They operate on entirely different levels, from physical tissue all the way to cellular pathways. And fourth, does the specific tool intrinsically change the biological response, or is a stimulus just a stimulus? Here's the crucial takeaway. If the stimulus response, or SR, framework is the actual foundation of the treatment, it means the needle is literally just one of many possible carriers for a stimulus. It's simply a delivery mechanism. It isn't necessarily the only valid one, nor is it magically exempt from the basic laws of physics and biology. If you want to understand the response, you absolutely must define the stimulus. It's just basic physics. Section 2. The unanchored needle variable. All right. Let's take a closer look at the weapon at our crime scene, the needle itself. And honestly, the contrast between ancient practice and modern science here is just fascinating. Ancient practitioners intentionally documented using gold, silver, iron, and copper. They likely sensed or observed totally different electrochemical properties and tissue reactions based on the specific metal they used. Yet modern clinical research almost universally, and you could say rather lazily, defaults to standard stainless steel. By doing this, modern studies are treating a highly active dynamic variable, like the metal's conductivity and electrochemical reaction in the body, as a meaningless, flat constant. They've essentially wiped an absolutely crucial variable right off the board. But wait, it actually gets worse. Beyond totally ignoring the electrochemical properties of the metal, the physical geometry of the needle is practically ignored too. If you zoom in on these things, you have parameters like exact needle length, thickness and diameter, the specific shape of the tip, is it perfectly sharp or slightly rounded, and even the microscopic craftsmanship of the surface itself. All of these dictate the contact area, the tissue displacement, and the local pressure. Yet, across thousands of scientific studies, these details are frequently just completely unrecorded. They are treated as a totally uniform operation when they are anything but. Researchers will spend countless hours intensely studying secondary variables. They'll meticulously document the exact needle insertion depth, the angle, the specific frequency of the twirling techniques. But the source makes a really brilliant observation here. Doing all this without first anchoring the material and geometric data of the needle itself is basically like building your entire scientific methodology on quicksand. Think about it. If your primary stimulus is a mystery, your understanding of the response is nothing but a house of cards. Section 3. The mechanism black box. Let's crack open that black box. Modern studies have actually isolated 4 distinct biological mechanisms for acupuncture: electrochemical, mechanical, immune, and neural. But here's the kicker. Have they linked these biological actions back to the specific physical or chemical parameters of the needle used? For electrochemical, absolutely not. The material is entirely untested. For mechanical, only partially, and that's just through twirling evidence. For immune responses like microdamage, no way. Literally any sharp object is going to trigger inflammation. And for neural pathways? Again, no. They haven't linked nerve activation to the specific tool used at all. So what we have are 4 completely separate, unlinked mechanism lines. So imagine this logical puzzle for a second. If the needle's metal material is the real catalyst for healing through electrochemical means, would a plastic or wooden needle of the exact same shape still do the trick? Or, on the flip side, if mechanical tissue pulling is the main key, does the metal even matter at all? Real science requires isolating a single variable to answer this stuff, but right now, everything is just tangled together in one big knot. Because researchers haven't nailed down that active variable, they slam into a massive wall when setting up control groups. To test if acupuncture actually works, they use fake, or sham needles on a control group. But you won't believe what they actually use. Some use blunt tips that don't even pierce the skin. Others use literally toothpicks. Some use thumbtacks. The sham designs are wildly inconsistent across the entire scientific literature. And how can you possibly compare the effectiveness of a real treatment when the baseline fake treatment is constantly changing? It just exponentially amplifies the uncertainty of any resulting data. Section 4. The misplaced precision illusion. And that brings us to the absolute core culprit, identified in our source material. It's a really dangerous methodological flaw called misplaced precision. Basically, it's the scientifically flawed practice of using incredibly precise analytical tools, we're talking complex structural equations and layered Bayesian models, to analyze a subject that is low precision and fundamentally undefined. It's kind of like creating a perfectly accurate high-definition map of a completely imaginary island. It creates this precise illusion that successfully masks a totally unanchored foundational variable. The source text actually captures the absurdity of this perfectly. It calls out the practice of reporting p-values to 3 decimal places when the primary variable is completely missing. It's wild to think about. Researchers will produce these incredibly intricate brain activity heat maps using functional MRIs to show exactly how a patient's brain reacts to a needle, but they haven't even established what exact instrument was used to trigger the response in the first place. They are literally applying ultra-high statistical complexity just to hide the fact that they skipped step 1. Section 5. Rebuilding scientific logic. So, we've identified the crime, but how do we actually solve it? First, let's be super clear about the ground rules here. The source material is absolutely not claiming that acupuncture doesn't work. Patients do get better, real biological responses do occur. The goal here is entirely neutral. It is fiercely insisting that the scientific research evaluating the practice must return to strict foundational logic. If it works, we need to know exactly why it works, and we can't be skipping steps to get there. We need to rebuild using 4 undeniable pillars of scientific logic. Number 1, definability. The stimulus must be clearly defined. Number 2, testability. Relationships have to be isolated and tested properly. Number 3, integrability. Remember those 4 biological mechanisms we talked about earlier? They must be integrated into one single model. And number 4, proportionality. The statistical claims you make absolutely must be strictly proportional to the actual quality and certainty of your evidence. Practically speaking, what does this look like? Well, here is the blueprint for future research. Scientists absolutely must start systematically reporting the physical traits of the needle, down to the exact millimeter and the exact metal composition. They must isolate single variables instead of relying on those wildly inconsistent sham controls. They need to combine the electrochemical, mechanical, immune, and neural responses into one holistic model. And finally, they just have to stop using overly complex statistics on unanchored variables to manufacture a false sense of scientific certainty. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to take away from this explainer today. If modern science cannot systematically define the most basic physical tool being used in a treatment, can any subsequent biological conclusion truly be considered solved? It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most advanced science fails, not in the complexity of its answers, but in the sheer simplicity of its very first question. Thanks so much for joining me, and as always, keep questioning the foundations.